With the crypto bull market in full swing, I want to take a minute to highlight Cardano native tokens being listed on centralized exchanges, which are now enjoying billions worth of dollars in terms of trading volume compared to the mere millions that we have here trading on decentralized exchanges in the Cardano ecosystem. What's up, Beta Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. As a part of today's video, I want to provide some pros and cons of Cardano native tokens or Cardano native assets being listed as tradable assets on centralized exchanges, for example, like Binance, Coinbase, KuCoin, Bybit, etc., compared to decentralized exchanges, which we have in the ecosystem, including MintSwap, SundaySwap, Wing Riders, etc. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right on in. This is breaking down the recent highlight of the SNEC team chatting with Bybit, a pretty well-known centralized exchange, stating that they're aiming to get their SNEC token listed there, right? So imagine the implications that this could have for a token like SNEC now being brought to the masses and making it so much easier for them to get access to Cardano, potentially bringing them in to take a closer look into the ecosystem. Next, we have Iagon, which just released a post not too long ago asking the community if they were required to provide 3,000 signups to a particular exchange in exchange, no pun intended, for a listing. Could the community back them up with an overwhelming majority of the community saying, of course, we will back you up? So I think this is just the very beginning of the conversation surrounding Cardano native tokens being listed on these centralized exchanges. So as I mentioned, I want to highlight some of the benefits and some of the potential drawbacks of CEXs compared to DEXs. As always, if you do enjoy updates like these, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by and you want more content like this, highlighting everything going on in Cardano, consider subscribing. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me about anything we're chatting about, then leave a comment down below. If you want to take it a step further in supporting the channel, consider delegating with the official Dapp Central stake pool, which is stake pool ticker DAPP, where you can now earn ADA as well as Matera. That said, let's jump straight into this. As I mentioned, with the uptick in the terms of the bull market, we've seen a lot more liquidity coming into the space, right? So this is coming directly from the block stating crypto exchanges daily volume rises to a nearly $100 billion market for the first time since 2021. Yes, that's $100 billion. So if we take a look here just in comparison, right, taking a look at Cardano here, it's a very small number, but the 24-hour DEX volume in the Cardano ecosystem alone currently sits at 17 million ADA, which is equivalent right now to the price of about $12 million, given the fact that Cardano's trading at about 70 some cents. So if you take a look at that, if the total exchange volume here on centralized exchanges was just a mere $1 billion, that would only be about 1% that were trading in Cardano. So keep in mind that this is $100 billion. So we have less than 0.1% being traded on Cardano directly in a decentralized way compared to what's being traded right now on all the centralized markets. Now, keep in mind, of course, when we're looking at the centralized number in terms of volume, that includes multiple chains, right? We've got Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polygon, Matic, Solana, and we've also even got the meme coins included in there as well. So just a bit to keep in mind there when trying to compare these numbers, that it's not an apple to apple comparison. But the main point I wanted to raise here is the fact that centralized exchanges are seeing an uptick in terms of volume, which means exposure for Cardano native tokens if they're able to get listed on those exchanges. The very last thing I want to highlight here is that the 7-day moving average on daily trading volume across the majority of centralized exchanges has now reached $97.4 billion on March 6th. Which is now up from the lows of around $24 billion in February. So in just the last month alone, we've seen the number of billions of dollars trading rise from 24 billion all the way to about $97 billion. So almost a 4x just looking at the trading volume on centralized exchanges. Jumping into some of the pros and cons, depending on which one you're looking at, whether it's a centralized exchange or decentralized exchange. First, I want to focus on the centralized exchanges. So when it comes to CEXs, right, CEX for short, you're going to have the ability to get a very friendly user interface in a very friendly app or trading environment overall. I've traded on multiple centralized exchanges, most notably something like Coinbase, which makes it extremely easy, right? Providing a pro or an advanced version of their trading platform, depending on your level of expertise. So even somebody who has no experience with trading is able to quickly come in on a centralized exchange, use their user-friendly platform in order to begin trading. Whereas somebody with more experience that wants that more in-depth or nuanced platform can go into a pro mode, offering more of those flexible features. Number two is going to be the multiple layers of security, which obviously include traditional passwords, as well as two-factor authentication and potential email verification, or even biometric verification there as well. Now, the potential downsides to that, I'll jump into in just a minute. But third, in terms of pros for centralized exchanges, there's going to be massive liquidity, which I just highlighted there with the trading volume. So this is going to be in big comparison to the liquidity that we have on DEXs, again, which I'll touch on here in just a moment. Next, we have the different types of trading that are available on centralized exchanges, which include spot trading, which provides the lowest amount of risk with no risk of liquidations. There's also margin trading or leverage trading, which provides you the ability to earn more, but also lose more by being liquidated, because again, you're borrowing additional money to trade, which enlarges or adds leverage to your position. There's also futures trading, which is probably the most risky. But again, these are some of the benefits to a centralized exchange listing. Now, getting towards the end here, we have the ability to also quickly trade or swap on centralized exchanges using multiple stable coins, whether that's USDT, USDC, just Circles or Tether's stablecoins appear to be the biggest supported sort of stablecoins, but a lot of trading pairs are denominated in fiat or in some sort of stablecoin. Last but not least is just the speed or the execution of the trades on a centralized exchange. So on a DEX, you have to put on a transaction that is actually executed on chain. So depending on the load of the network, that will dictate how quickly your swap goes through. Whereas on a centralized exchange, they have their own liquidity pools, or their own order books, I should say, which allow for literally instantaneous trades to take place. I've placed trades on multiple centralized exchanges with them executing in less than 1 single second. So that'll do it there for some of the pros when it comes to the centralized exchanges. So now that we've touched on the positives for a centralized exchange, I want to dive into some of the drawbacks. So the first and probably the biggest is going to be the fact that you have to undergo KYC on the majority of these centralized exchanges, basically meaning that you have to provide, whether that's passport information, telephone information, email information, or even driver's license information, right, to these platforms for them to make sure that you're a valid investor, in that if you have to report to, for example, a taxing agency, that they've got all of their requirements and regulations in order to be able to supply that information to this proper agency. So that's probably the biggest thing there with the centralized exchange, is the fact that you have to give up a little bit of your privacy in order to open some of these accounts. And while some of them do offer a free account, you don't always get all the benefits that you would if you were to undergo KYC and AML procedures. Next is going to be the potential threats when it comes to them being vulnerable, right? However, I want to state that this is a sort of a dual edge here, because if a centralized exchange does happen to be hacked, they do typically have the funds in place to be able to pursue whoever's hacked or taken advantage of the platform from a legal perspective, right? Whereas on a DEX, you don't typically have that, because again, you're operating in a centralized environment. An additional drawback to the centralized exchanges will be some of the fees. So every time that you're putting in a trade, there will be some sort of a service fee. However, to keep this fair, this is extremely comparable to a batcher fee, which you're also placing on a DEX, or which usually applies to an AMM style protocol on a DEX in order to actually have your swap executed. So I think that is really the biggest thing there. Last but not least, in terms of cons for some of the centralized exchanges, which is just that, the fact that it's a centralized exchange, meaning that you have to send your crypto to a third party's wallet before you can actually begin trading, right? So technically, if they were to go down, for example, if Coinbase went down, they would be in custody of your funds. And there's actually been multiple reports that if something like Coinbase does go down, you're basically SOL, as opposed to a self-custodial approach where you always have control of your own assets. So that'll do it there for updates when it comes to potential benefits and drawbacks of centralized exchanges. Jumping over into the DEXs, I want to quickly touch on those as well. So the biggest benefit to a DEX is that it's completely private and anonymous, meaning you never have to undergo any sort of KYC or AML procedures. This also means that anybody around the world with an internet connection to a protocol and a connected wallet can begin to swap and interact with it. So that's the biggest thing there about being in a decentralized environment. Next, you have the ability to actually self-custody your own assets. So you never have to send anything to a third party in order to interact or make those swaps. Last but not least, in certain circumstances, if you hold the protocol's token or the DEX's token, you are able to potentially get some of the revenue from swaps executed on that particular DEX. So whereas on a centralized exchange, you will never actually be paid for, owning their token, or you will never earn a part of the platform's fees when utilizing a DEX. Depending on their revenue sharing model, there are instances where you can actually earn by owning the tokens of a particular decentralized exchange. Some of the drawbacks of a decentralized exchange do include, though, the low liquidity. So I just mentioned there earlier, taking a look at the Cardano 24-hour trading volume versus the overall market, it doesn't even compare, right? We can't begin to try to compare one to the other. There's a lot less liquidity on DEXs directly in Cardano as opposed to centralized exchanges, which makes it extremely hard to execute larger trades on the Cardano network directly. Next, we have the additional hurdle of not always having fiat-backed pairs being supported on DEXs. So if you jump onto MinSwap, SundaeSwap, etc., you'll notice that the majority of trading pairs are ADA / some other Cardano native token, whereas on centralized exchanges, it's typically some sort of fiat-backed stablecoin against the asset that you're trying to swap. So it again makes it very hard for anybody who has stablecoins to be able to facilitate trading in a decentralized environment. Getting closer towards the end here, we do have some potential risks when it comes to impermanent loss, but this only applies to AMM style protocols. And then very last but not least, we have just slower overall swapping speeds, right? So on Cardano, one of the biggest things that we've kind of heard is that when people come in to make swaps here, as opposed to Ethereum or just EVM based networks, which take about 5 to 10 seconds to execute a swap, on Cardano, that takes in between 1 to 2 minutes. So we do have DEXs revamping, increasing throughput, rewriting smart contracts, adopting Plutus V2, etc., which are coming down the pipes with MinSwap V2, SundaeSwap V3, and even Wing Riders Pro. So the community is definitely aware, but those are some things to keep in mind when comparing the pros and cons of decentralized exchanges versus centralized exchanges. Now, I want to end this out by saying that it would be extremely huge to get Iagon listed on a tier 1 centralized exchange, as well as SNEC on Bybit. Again, this only opens up more opportunities, provides more liquidity, even though it's indirect to Cardano, and it provides more visibility to the ecosystem, with people potentially wanting to dive deeper, jumping directly onto the Cardano blockchain after interacting with a Cardano native asset on a centralized exchange. That will do it here for today's video. Hope you found this to be useful. As always, if you did, please make sure to smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by and you want more content like this, consider subscribing. And last but not least, if you have any questions for me surrounding anything I've talked about, whether it relates to Iagon, SNEC, centralized exchanges, or decentralized exchanges, then please make sure to go ahead and leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.